As you know by now, the Nets have traded Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks after Kyrie demanded a trade on Friday. The Mavs sending Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, an unprotected 2029 first-round pick and second-round picks in 2027 and 2029 to the Nets in exchange for Irving and Markieff Morris. Kyrie moves on to his fourth team after parts of 4 seasons there in Brooklyn. And Adrian Wojnarowski joins us now. So, Woj, Kyrie is a free agent after the season, didn't get that long-term deal with the Nets. How would you characterize this period of time with the Mavs in terms of their willingness to sign him long-term in Dallas?
Hey, Hannah, there's a relatively short window here to the end of the season and into the playoffs to really get a sense, I think, for Dallas about how much they want to invest in Kyrie Irving long term. They can do a 2-year extension, 2-year max extension until June 30th, and then do the longer deal when he becomes a free agent in the summer. And they traded for Kyrie Irving with the intent that that's how this would go. But if you're Dallas, just like with Brooklyn, the shorter deal you can get Irving on, the better chances you have, of getting him to be cooperative, reliable, invested in the team. And also, if you have to move him, if you are forced to trade him again, it's easier to find a deal when he's on a shorter deal. So that'll be a negotiation for Irving and the Mavericks in the offseason. But they gave up fairly significant assets, draft picks, Dorian Finney-Smith. And they certainly didn't do it so that Kyrie Irving could walk at the end of the year.
Yeah, first player in NBA history to average 25, 5, and 5 for a team in one season and then change teams. Lots more to...
Will this work? Well, the Mavericks are an ISO-heavy team. They average an NBA-high 25.9 isolations per game. And lucky for them, they just acquired the guy that scores the most points per direct ISO this season. And he's going to be paired with Luka Doncic, who's averaging nearly 34 points and his 35 30-point games this season, the second most by a player before the All-Star break over the last 25 seasons. Maybe the question on everyone's mind, who plays defense? Well, according to NBA stats, the Mavericks allow nearly 115 points per 100 possessions, which ranks 23rd in the NBA. All right, we've got Tim Legler now to look at all this, how all this is going to work in Dallas. So, Tim, Luka and Kyrie, thoughts? How's it going to work?
Well, I'm going to have to see it, right? I need to at least see a little bit of a sample size here, Jay. But my first initial reaction is I don't know how the two of them can find their rhythm together. And you mentioned the issues that they're going to have defensively. They already have those issues, and now they just got significantly worse defensively because even losing Dorian Finney-Smith, he guarded a lot of the premier ball handlers that Dallas had to face to protect Luka Doncic. Well, now that protection is gone. So both of these guys are going to be asked to guard elite-level players. So defensively, they got worse. Offensively, I want to see how Kyrie Irving reacts to Luka Doncic's ball dominance, because this is a guy that handles the basketball and controls the basketball to a greater extent than any player in the NBA. And now you've got Kyrie Irving, who also likes to get his hands on the ball first and put that thing on the ground before he has an opportunity to go do his thing. So I think there's going to be some issues finding how to strike that balance. There's no doubt they'll be better when Luka's off the floor, and that was a big problem that they had. They now have another offensive star to go to when Luka's getting a rest. But what about the minutes they play together on both ends of the floor? It's going to be very interesting to me to watch the pace, the rhythm, and then both guys sort of knowing when they have to defer to the other one. That is something that's not easy to work out in a very short period of time.
You mentioned Luka getting scoring help. His Mavs teammates have scored 30 points in a game 6 times this season. Kyrie's done that 15 times by himself. All right. Tim, you hang tight. Hannah, let's go back over.
Yeah, but the thing is, like Tim said, it's like dribble, dribble, dribble with Luka Doncic, right? And Kevin Durant, who he leaves behind, one of the most efficient players, if not the most efficient in the NBA. Now he's left in Brooklyn there, Woj. He has 3 years left on his deal. I mean, he came in a package deal with Kyrie. He asked for trading to get in the summer. What does the future look like for him?
Well, the Nets certainly hope that future is in Brooklyn, and they're trying to do everything they can between now and Thursday's trade deadline to continue to improve this roster around Kevin Durant. They've got 3 future first-round picks that they can use in trades and some tradable contracts and assets on this roster. But listen, this is a Nets team that is limited right now by the lack of production and availability of Ben Simmons. That's a contract that really, no deal is impossible to move, but not without incentivizing it with picks. So I think Ben Simmons would likely continue to be in Brooklyn, but they want Kevin Durant to have the best supporting cast he can by the time they get out of that Thursday trade deadline, and hope that this is a team that can continue to try to contend in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, in the meantime, he's out with that MCL sprain. According to the timetable he gave us a couple weeks ago, that should be being in the process of being reevaluated. So let's go back over to Jay and Legs. You can't replace Kyrie, but what else could they do?
Yeah, that's a good question, Hannah. So, Tim, what's the move that they could make before the deadline that could help this Brooklyn lineup?
It's going to be difficult because you got to think about, Jay, now how quickly this all transpired. I mean, you going into the weekend, we're not expecting anything to happen with this team. And in fact, I said last week that this was the best stretch I'd seen Kyrie have as a Net. And I thought now the Nets were legitimate championship contenders. So now you go from that to here. We're sitting here on Monday with the trade deadline on Thursday. You know, Woj alluded to it. Ben Simmons is almost impossible to move. They have some picks, obviously, that maybe they could dangle to try to get another star player. But I think this, they did get back a lot in return. They got one of the best, role players in Dorian Finney-Smith and what he can do on both ends of the floor. You get a guy in Dinwiddie who can score the basketball. They've got a nice collection of role players. The problem is they are now at best, I think, a second-round team in the East. And, 72 hours ago, they were a team that could potentially win it all. And that's what Kevin Durant is faced with, that reality. So let's see when he finally speaks what his reaction is going to be to this. We don't expect him to be moved by Thursday. So this is what they're going to have to roll forward with. I don't see a substantial addition that they're going to make in this short period of time that's going to be a tipping point over Milwaukee, Philly, and Boston. No,
you're right. They were looking good. Now it's like, we'll see what we get. Oh, trading for high-level point guards, isn't something new for the Mavs. In 1998, the Mavericks traded for that first guy right there, Steve Nash. He ended up playing 5 seasons in Dallas, making 2 All-Star games before leaving in 2004 to go back to the Phoenix Suns. 2008, the Mavericks swapped players and a pick for Jason Kidd. Kidd played 5 seasons in Dallas, helping the Mavericks win their only NBA championship in 2011 over the Miami Heat. And more recently, 2014, the Mavs trading with the Celtics for Rajon Rondo. Rondo only lasting half a season, playing just 46 games for Dallas, averaging just under 10 points and around 7 assists per game. All right, here are the full details of this Mavericks-Nets trade. In exchange for Kyrie and Markieff Morris, the Mavericks are sending the Nets Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, an unprotected 2029 first-round pick and second-round picks in 2027 and 2029. For more, we're joined by Nets reporter Nick Friedell. Nick, here we are again with the Nets with some major decisions to be made in Brooklyn. What more can you tell us about Kevin Durant's future in the wake of this trade?
Jay, everything's in a holding pattern right now. Part of the reason the Nets made the deal when they did to send Kyrie to Dallas was so that they would have enough time to see what else is out there in advance of Thursday's deadline. The issue is they still have Ben Simmons' contract on the books. He's got 2 years left after this one. That contract is an absolute albatross on top of this organization right now. Because the issue is the Nets and Sean Marks, the GM, are saying, all right, Kevin, trust us. We will find a way to make this work with you as the focal point still. You tell me where that big asset or that difference-making player is going to come from when you still have to get rid of potentially Simmons and that contract in some kind of other deal that you're going to have to make. The Nets are really between a rock and a hard place right now because they're trying to sell Durant on the future. Everything centers around him in this organization. There just don't seem to be a lot of paths in order to get Simmons' contract off the books and bring somebody else on who Durant would want to play with and feel comfortable that he could still compete for a championship.
This is not where they thought they'd be. I mean, they had Harden, Durant, Kyrie. You talk to people in this sport every day about what was in Brooklyn and what's now. So what are the people in Brooklyn saying about this trade now that Kyrie is gone?
Jay, they're saying that this is the greatest team that never was in this era. This team was built to win titles. It's not going to happen now. And the Kyrie trade is just another acknowledgement, certainly in the short term, that everything that had been built to succeed right now isn't going to happen. And when you look back at this tenure, especially with Kyrie, everything was shrouded in dysfunction. There are a lot of different reasons why. We could go on and on about what has occurred, but this team was built to win championships, to go down as one of the all-time great teams. Kevin Durant attached himself to Kyrie, and Kevin is always going to have to look back now on these few years and go, what might have been? So there are a lot of different layers always to the Nets. But now that this deal is official, when people look back at this era, they're going to look out and say, this is a moment in time that everybody should remember, because if you don't have all your stars on the same page at all times, it's going to end up in dysfunction, and it's going to end up in the mess that the Nets are in right now.
Meanwhile, as for the team that didn't get Kyrie, and that would be the Los Angeles Lakers, just outside of playoff contention. Next 2 games at home. They travel to Golden State. We know Steph is injured. They're going to play the Warriors. They're going to go to Portland and play the Blazers. And again, LeBron James approaching the NBA scoring record. So lots to talk about, as usual, with the Lakers. And for that, we go to our man, Dave McMenamin. Lakers certainly were on Kyrie's short list. Now they won't be adding him, obviously. And LeBron expressing his disappointment on Twitter, saying maybe it's me. Almost felt sorry for him looking at that. What is next for LA with the trade deadline? Just days away, Dave.
And the Lakers put their best foot forward trying to acquire Kyrie Irving. They offered both their 2027 and 2029 first-round picks in a package involving Russell Westbrook to salary match. They felt like the Mavericks just got more of future assets and current assets than the Lakers could offer. And there was a sentiment that the Brooklyn owner, Joe Tsai, just did not want to deal with a team where Kyrie Irving wanted to go. He didn't want to give Kyrie Irving what he wanted after all the turmoil he caused his franchise. So the Lakers will go back to the same teams we've been talking about since the offseason. The Utah Jazz, the Charlotte Hornets, Chicago Bulls, Toronto Raptors, to see what's out there and try to make a trade here, because it is still a wide open Western Conference. Even though the Lakers are in 13th right now, they put together a 5-game winning streak and get some new pieces. They could be hosting a first-round playoff series potentially. They just got to get some things go their way.
The thing is, though, they're done with Russell Westbrook after the season. If things don't work out in Dallas, we could be looking potentially at the Lakers getting another shot at getting Kyrie in LA. So there's still all sorts of scenarios on the table. But in the meantime, I'm kind of glad, Dave, that this whole business is not taking away from what LeBron is accomplishing right now, looking for that all-time scoring record. It could be in his sights as soon as tomorrow night. I know you sat down with him to talk specifically about him. What's he saying about the milestone?
Yeah, Hannah, putting his frustration aside from where the team currently stands, and certainly LeBron is hoping that a deal will be made in these next 4 days, this is something that is 2 decades in the making. And listen, the record has stood for 40 years. This is a major, major accomplishment in all of sports. And LeBron said he thinks back to being a kid and watching the home run race with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, and just kind of how it captured his imagination. Anytime those guys went up to bat, you thought they could hit one out in their pursuit of Roger Maris. And in kind of the same way now, the sports world is looking at LeBron James and kind of giving him his due, giving him his flowers a little bit, shaking their head in recognition of this is just remarkable. He was the youngest player ever to average 30 points in a season. Right now, you're 20, 38 years old, the oldest player ever to average 30 points in a season. That's one way to look at this incredible, incredible scoring accomplishment he's on the verge of passing.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.